Welcome back to my channel, guys. Tonight, I have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Jon Malin of JAWBREAKERS fame and an amazing Indiegogo campaign proving to the SJW comic book industry that they can go fuck themselves.
Yeah, pretty much.
I honestly think you guys have shown that you don't have to have some big backing or some major brand behind you to put out an amazing piece of product.
Yeah, we've completely went around the industry. So we had no comic book industry media. The mainstream media sites like Newsarama, Comic Book Resources, Bleeding Cool. I mean, these are all the kind of go-to places in the comic book industry that you get talked about, and we've been under a complete blackout by the mainstream comic book industry, and we've circumvented them by going to YouTube and to talk. Myself, Brett Smith, and others, we've gone out and we were on the I was on the cunt stream. I don't know if DNC ended up getting on there or not.
I don't know if he did or not, but all I know is that
he's a loner.
Yeah, I was like, I was asking you when we were talking. I was like, you should bring diversity on. He's like, he's a solo kind of guy. I don't know if he'd be down.
Yeah, he runs solo, man. I think sometimes he can pull it together with other people, but if you ever watch his channel, which is Diversity in Comics, he can go on a spiel for an hour straight, and it'll be funny, it'll be engaging, but you put him in a chat with any sense of dialogue, and sometimes he can be on, and then other times like his timing is off, and he recognizes it himself, and so he tends to avoid, like, even myself, I've never been on his channel and I'm drawing his book. So, but I don't take it personally because I understand who the guy is. I mean, it's like I don't know, functioning recluse, kind of like social media recluse.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny that you mentioned you've never been on his channel yet. You're drawing his book for him, and I always wondered, how'd you guys link up, or where the idea to go this route came from? Because I know you got kind of kicked in the balls, to be quite honest, by the political bullshit that's going on at Marvel and elsewhere lately. So what made you and Diversity link up?
I may repeat some of the things that I was saying on the cunt stream, but before I had any real contact with Diversity in Comics, and I was on a conversation with on another live stream, and I think it might have been off air, but during that conversation, I was saying that this community would have to test the market at some point, and I had used Diversity in Comics as an example. And because he had 60,000 followers or subscribers, I felt that that was a overlap for the community, because there's other people, Mim Headroom, I Love Comics, Doug Ernst, all these guys, Ethan Van Sciver, or Comic Artist Pro Secrets, which is his channel. But all these guys are all part of what would be considered the same community. Some people call it the Move the Needle community or the Comicsgate community. And but with Diversity in Comics having the largest audience, I felt that if you could take 10% of that audience, that you could probably sell them on a $3.99 book that was being shipped into stores. So that'd be 6,000. At a higher price point, doing a Kickstarter, or in this case an Indiegogo, I felt you could maybe get 5% of that audience, and that would be 3,000 people. So but I thought that if for this market to be tested, it would have to be with an artist that was going to see the whole thing through, give it their whole, give everything into this book from beginning to end, and not just let it peter out because it's an independent project. And a month, maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months later, pretty much out of the blue, because we didn't have much connection. We knew some of the same people. And I think maybe mainly because of my position where I had been vocal against the SJWs that were infiltrating or infesting the comic book industry. He probably heard about this along the way and pretty much out of the blue contacted me and asked me if I wanted to do it. And, there was some hesitation on my part because Diversity in Comics is, for anyone that doesn't know, he's a bit abrasive. He calls people out in the industry. He's a comic book critic. He considers himself a roaster. So that, by its meaning, it's not very light. It's, it can be not very sensitive at times. Anyways,
he's a blunt guy. He's very direct, and he won't hold his tongue just to appease someone.
Yes. And so anyways, he brought this up to me about doing a Kickstarter at the time. And I was hesitant because I felt that to involve myself with him would be sending out certain signals into the community or into the industry, I'm sorry, which was he was basically public enemy number one. But again, speaking of overlap, some of his views overlap with my views. I feel the comic book industry has been hindered by the people known as, the extreme far left or social justice warriors. And I was either going to do my own thing at the time, my own project. I've already got 2 issues of it done. It's called Graveyard Shift. I started on it 2 years ago or 3 years ago before I even worked at Marvel. And that was the work that got me hired at Marvel. So I was going to pick up that and release it. But then he contacted me to do this. So I was like, well, he's offering money. And if I really want to find out if there is a market here, I'm pretty much the only one that I could trust to go in full bore on this and see what we were able to do. And long story short now is we've pulled, I think, somewhere around, let's see where we're at right now. Yeah, we're at like $163,000+. So
yeah, and just for the simple fact that you guys, I mean, I saw a Diversity post it today, that small shops are boycotting the book and this stuff, and it's like, okay, I understand that you may not agree with whatever the view of the creator is or the hashtag or the movement, but you know what? You're missing out on a golden opportunity. Because I mean, this could always go completely independent. You guys could start your own publication, and what, you want to miss out on something that is going to change the industry and make it, better. You want to miss out on that when comic book stores are already having hard time and issues right now.
Yeah, I think boycott is a softer term than what I would use. I would say that at least one comic shop retailer is banning our book from his store, and that's what it is. It's a ban. And
one of the people in the chat actually just said Big Bang Comics in Dublin are complaining about the Move the Needle hashtag and telling people do they know what they're supporting. So it's not just like one comic book store banning. It's this whole mentality. I mean, you see it in Magic the Gathering. You see it in these other communities where they're just eating themselves alive and destroying their core audience.
Yeah, because people have gone to the far left and they're all being revealed for what they are at this point, and all they can do is double and triple down, and they'll do that if they have to wipe out the whole industry. And they'll call it a win at the end of the day because they'll do their fallback and they'll say, well, we always planned to beat the patriarchy. And that's what things like comic books are generally seen by them as a boys club. I'm sure Magic the Gathering gets a lot of the same labeling. And that's what they do. I mean, there was a comic book writer that put out a supportive post on a project, or on this project on JAWBREAKERS. And this writer was just saying, hey, you know, this is a good idea because it involves, you know, military, you know, it's a non-offensive, pro superhero, pro military. Diversity in comics was, I believe, served in the Army and the Marines. I served in the Army National Guard. So this writer was addressed publicly, and I know this because I saw it, because I was tagged in it in the original thing, you know, just congratulations. And this writer was approached by their editor-in-chief. Jesus. And they labeled this editor-in-chief, made it very clear to this writer that he considers us to be extremists and people that are propagating hate and bigotry. And I've been called, you know, since January, and, you know, my views have been pretty public. I've been called a racist, a bigot, an anti-Semite, even though the comment I made was 100% pro-Israel. I compared the X-Men to the Jews versus Hitler's Germany. And so anyways, I've been labeled the whole thing, everything that they name everybody now, but I've yet to be called until today an extremist. And I think that's very concerning because now the labeling has gone up from Nazi to extreme, or from bigot to Nazi to extremist. I mean, we're one step away before people just openly start saying that we're terrorists. I don't even own a gun. So I'm a moderate that voted for Barack Obama. And I've been painted by the website Bleeding Cool, one of the ones that are not covering us. They went to a great length to try to label me as a supporter of the alt-right. And,
yeah, I saw that article by that, what's his fucking name? I don't know, whatever that douche lord's name is, who was pulling tweets, and Rich Johnson or whatever his name, pulling tweets and, you know, throwing allegations, you know, without anything. What, because you make a comment on how you view the X-Men, that makes you some sort of terrorist or Nazi or whatever they want to portray you as. And you have these pushes by them when the industry is getting challenged, and it's any industry. They start trying to paint the people who are doing well out on their own and doing it a little differently, or they don't fall into the PC. They start to paint them as the bad guys, and they go as far as they have to win. And I'm super excited to see that, one, you have community backing, and the community's like, you know what? We're not going to stand for this shit in our industry and what we enjoy anymore. And you have massive support from, you know, YouTube, Twitter, all over the place. It's nice to see.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to see. You know, because we could have, when excuse me, when our campaign went up, we put it up, you know, it went up for 5,000. That was all we were looking for in the backing. And what happened was everyone got behind that. And yeah, we get up to 165, but we didn't know that when we started. If we would have done just $5,000 after 30 days, you know, this would have been used to make it look like they're, you know, egg on our face. And, you know, to a large degree, there would have been. And, you know, so to anybody who's wanting to do something like this, you know, understand, you know, it's all right to, you know, to question it, to think about it, you know, but there's a real fear there that you're going to step out and there's going to be no support, that nobody's going to be there. No one's going to show up for you. And in a very real way, I put my entire career on the line. I mean, I think it's safe to say that I'm blacklisted from the mainstream comic book industry, if not the entire industry. I mean, they are at the point of trying to ban our book from at least one shop. So if that idea spreads and other people say that, or if this goes in and starts affecting the orders and stuff, I mean, that's scary stuff, because this is infiltrating not just into the comic book market, but the comic book market is almost like the canary in the coal mine. It's going to affect it because it's so small. It only takes a little bit to make a big effect.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is clearly spreading through Hollywood and news media, and all the people who are manipulating the truths and the statistics, you know, from everything with the gender pay gap and whatever they can do. The Anita Sarkeesians, or everything's sexist, everything's racist. And because that's their business, that's how they're getting funded. And what they're doing is they're just destroying their video games. You know, thankfully, is such a massive market that my understanding, because I'm not a gamer, but my understanding of what happened with the Gamergate stuff was that they were basically able to shut them up because people, you know, they want their bloodshed, they want their women, and there's so much money, no one wants to rock the boat. Whereas the video game, or I'm sorry, the comic book industry is so small, you know, it doesn't take a whole lot of influence. You know, you put 10 editors into any company that come with that SJW ideology, and they can take over that company.
Oh yeah, and they'll manipulate it. I mean, even you used Anita Sarkeesian as a talking point, and look at what she's done. She crowdfunded her stuff on the back of a lie. I don't know how much you know about her, but she crowdfunded it on the back of a lie that she was going to create this, you know, web series and everything, and put out 6 episodes. And I think she barely got to the 6th episode after year 2 and raised, I don't know, $200,000-$300,000 for this piece of garbage that she put out. And now you have people like, you know who Amanda Knox is, that girl who got arrested for murder in Italy?
Yeah.
And she got off, or was finally found innocent. So she's working for Broadly now, that feminist publication by Vice, and she had Anita Sarkeesian on, and they're comparing what a person who's actually been imprisoned wrongfully to the shit Anita went through with tweets and people calling her names. Like,
yeah, I believe she went up to, I don't know if it was the Supreme Court or something like that, her and some other freakazoid talking about how they wanted to have protection, or the government instituting anti-bullying protection against them or something. Yeah, I mean, that girl's a loop job. So thankfully, I don't think we have one single Anita Sarkeesian, but I think we have a handful of minor Anita Sarkeesians, and they're all in the right places.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're at publication heads, right? They're at editors and other roles in, like,
they're in
Marvel.
Editorial positions, and editorial is what hired the freelancers. I was a freelancer, and yeah, so they control the script. They have the highest amount. They are literally the hirers and the firers. And, you know, the stuff that has been going on at Marvel was, you know, there was one editor, Christina Harrington, who had, and this is public information. I'm not telling any tales out of school here, because of Twitter. She died, and she wrote on Twitter, I think it was last year, that she was going to New York Comic Con. And when she did, she was offering up portfolio reviews. And this is how freelancers generally can get their jobs, is by going up, talking to an editor, showing their portfolio. And the editor is like, well, we like you, we don't. Here's my card. Maybe we'll do something, or maybe you're hired on the spot. And when she was promoting this on Twitter for this portfolio review for Marvel, she goes, yeah, you know, come over to this booth, unless you're a guy. And then she goes, well, guys can come too, but we see so many of y'all. So if you're a guy trying to get a job at Marvel, you know, what do you think your chances are going to be if you go to her to get a job?
zero to none, because it's funny because they want this equality and they want this push. You know what? Sorry that men have had this opportunity, or whatever you want to call it, and have been in the industry longer and work more hours and all these things that they don't take into account for the pay gap. But maybe there's just some things that guys are good at and girls are growing into, and to throw that mentality out there. Oh, I don't want to see any guys work because I want only female artists or only this. It's like, isn't that's discrimination? And
it's completely discrimination. And the thing is the hypocrisy, and that's how you can really tell, you know, the social justice warrior, is they can't even see their own hypocrisy. She would never tolerate a male writer saying the exact same thing to prospective female candidates to come into Marvel. If there was a male editor sitting up there saying, yeah, everyone come up, unless you're a girl. Well, if you're a girl, but we see so many of y'all, everyone would be asking for that or demanding that guy's job. So
hashtag Me Too moment, right there. And then,
yeah, it would destroy that editor's career in a heartbeat. But because it's the other gender and they're a marginalized group, there's certain protections, there's certain privileges that come with that. And, there's other things. There's another main editor at Marvel's still there that was making jokes about that eventually the entire United States is going to be brown because they're going to breed the white people out. So.
And he was making it as a joke in that he was happy about this?
This was a she.
Oh.
And yes, it was her joke, but can you, again, put it on the other shoes and see how quick someone has a seat in the unemployment line if it goes the other way around.
Or a rally outside of the building calling Marvel like racist and whatever else.
Yeah, they would not be tolerated. And it is tolerated because they're on the right side of the politics. And then there was another editor there, another female editor, who went during the election time and said, and I mean, she wrote this like a threat. She said, I'm roughly quoting here, "Make no mistake, whether Trump wins or loses, we will remember who supported him." And that's what she put on her Twitter.
So a threat to her employees,
to the freelancers she hires, and to her coworkers. And that, if that's not addressed, that might as well be law going right through that office. So, and her supervising editor, who was still there as well. I've had a discussion with him on the phone. He's completely aware of it, and nothing is going to happen to her at all.
Of course not, because then they would have to show the fact that, hey, maybe this far left garbage doesn't belong here, and maybe we should take into consideration what matters, which is skill and ability, and not look at whether they have a dick or a vagina or what color their skin is. Let's just look at the individual. Because
and see, that's just it. Like, you and I, we're playing by the same rules that, we've always been brought up to play by, people from the 80s, the 90s. I mean, that was just how we were living is, look, man, it's like, we're not going to be racist. We're going to get along with anyone that we have to work side by side with, or, if you are of a different race or gender or religion, whatever, we're Americans. We're all cool with that. We're going to tolerate whatever situation we get in with other people. And that's going to be fine. We're going to treat everybody for what their abilities are. And that's that. But there's this fiction that came up through these millennials, and a lot of them come from middle-class upbringings, which I think has skewed their perception of things, because they grew up in suburbs. They had everything pretty much handed to them, and they think that this is the way that all white people must live, because 90% of everyone in the suburbs is, the white middle-class family. So they don't understand there's plenty of poor white people, you know, that are growing up in trailers and trailer parks and are every bit as much on welfare and in really bad spots. But because they grew up in their own suburban bubbles of middle classdom, they're not aware. The world that they grew up in was, my parents got rich because they must have been white and they must have had advantages over other people, and not because they made better life choices or they worked hard.
Well, and it's that mentality that allowed Trump to win the election, because the middle of the country spoke. You can't look at, oh, all white people are this or all white people are that. You're going to have people get pissed off because it's getting tiring. I'm white, but I just see this, and I just see it over and over again. And it's like, oh, white people this, white people that. It's like, come on, let's not focus on what our differences are and look at the big picture. Be a fucking human and just have some normal compassion for people. And it doesn't have to break down to, oh, what religion are you? What nationality are you? Do you have a dick? Do you have half a dick and you're transitioning? Whatever. Let's focus on anything but that. They're regressing back to the shit pre a civil, revolution of the 60s,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care what you do in your free time. I don't care how you live your life, as long as you're not causing physical harm on other people, you're really no concern of mine. And I want everybody to have a good, fair shot at everything. And that's the right way to think. And only in modern day, because of these wackos that are taking over media, does somebody who say that get labeled a racist or a bigot or a transphobe. And all these things are happening. It's the craziest time to be alive. And I'm worried that it doesn't come back. I'm worried that sanity doesn't return, and that we slide into some, nightmare, really, where, it does become the dreaded 1984 type scenario where your speech and your thought and everything must be correct, or you need to be improved.
Well, yeah, and you look at what's happening in like Scotland and the UK, and I mean, really, those countries have been around a lot longer than the US. And if these leftists and these progressives want to push us to that, they don't understand that the shit that they say could just end them up in the same position. Like, you have people like Count Dankula, who, because he made a joke, was almost facing prison time. Thankfully, he got off with a sentence of $800, but that sets precedent. So he's appealing it. And I'm glad he's doing that, because in a country where butter knives are outlawed, you might want to second think where the fuck your country's going and how far you're allowing these, progressives and leftists to push. I mean, it's a temperature point. If you look at the comic book industry, it's a good measure of where they want to push. And in industries like Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast are fucking ridiculous for what they're pushing. And you see this whole narrative of, oh, we have to change the writing from he, she to they, there, and all these pushes. But why? Why wouldn't the minority have to adapt? If you're less than 1% of the populace, shouldn't you adapt and have agency in who you are and move on and not stress about proper pronouns and shit?
Well, the thing is, and again, and this is what everyone should consider, the SJWs, there will never, ever, ever be enough for them. They will never be satisfied. And, I was talking to my wife a day or two ago about this at a restaurant, because I was like, I realized I had my elbows on the table. I'm like, this used to be an offense. And, I can remember even when I was a young kid, it was like, get your elbows off the table. And it could have been a smack. It could have been a smack. If you don't get your elbows, like, this is an offense. This is something so rude. You deserve a smack.
Oh, my
And
dad slapped my arms off the table. When I used to put my elbows on the table, he would shove my arms off the table.
right. So what I was getting at was, human beings are a very odd thing. And anything can become an offense. If you let it go down the rabbit hole, anything can become a offense worthy of violence. And for an SJW who will never, ever be satisfied, we're headed in some really bad territory. And let's say you give them everything they want. You give them the pronouns, you give them the whatever, everything they ever want. You can't say LGB without adding the plus, without being a bigot. So everybody, your speech is going to be completely controlled to where you lay out the entire 25 letter, and it has to be in order and it has to be perfect. It will never be enough. They will add more. They will change more. When you adapt, they will continue to change and tell you what is offensive now and what isn't offensive. Just like language has gone from, George Carlin, I think it was, went on a thing about this in one of his old stand-ups. And it's like, it used to be okay to say handicap. Then it became this, then it became that, and then it became that, and then it became that. And it doesn't matter, because no matter what you call anything, they're going to keep changing it. So same thing, this may be a little heavy, but I'm not a big fan of guns. I don't like guns. I don't own a gun. Even though I've been labeled an extremist, I'm not big on guns. But I understand that, my belief for like the Second Amendment stuff is that you have firearms, specifically rifles, to be able to defend yourself from your country or from a foreign invader. So when we get into these gun control discussions, I've said this before, and here's the thing: you can win the discussion, and it doesn't matter, because as soon as you win the discussion, you'll find the same person who you spent an hour with go right off into the exact same conversation a day or two later, as if your conversation never happened. And again, what my position is with gun control is the simplest way to have this argument is, say, when you talk to someone who's anti-gun, you say, let's give you everything you want. What do you want? You can have it all. What do you want? Well, I want the bump stocks gone. I want this. And then you say, okay, boom, done. You got it. Now what do you want? Well, yeah, I guess that'd be okay, until there's another shooting.
And then they add more things they want, and it just compiles to the fact where they want everything. Yes. And that's what they're always going to be. They're going to be pushing for anything and everything they can get. And they're going to try to take away anything that is offensive to them. And like, that's what they don't understand, is the First Amendment and all these protections allow us and people that they may disagree with to offend them. And they need to realize that half the stuff they do offends me. Like, I don't want to hear about, horrible things of white people and how, that, this, that, and trans people, that, and everything is a push. So if I don't want to hear it, so should I start limiting their speech? Hell no, because I believe it's their right to offend me, and they should think the same way. But they never will, because they want control of everything.
Yeah, well, I think, and again, what I'm afraid is going to happen, my fears are against the far left and the far right. And what I'm afraid will happen, because, there will be new elections and, things will get shifted around, is I'm afraid what will happen is that the far right will take the arguments of the far left, and then they will start saying, what about our safe space? And the far left is already part segregationist. So when the far right starts using the exact same arguments that the far left has been building up as these are great cases, and everyone should be on board with safe spaces and stuff. And it's like, all right, well, what happens when the far right uses those arguments and then they either do or do not get their way? What are you going to do when all these guys with the guns get pissed off using the exact same argument of the far left?
Well, and you see some correlation. The further you go to either side, you see a lot of this. It's a mirror. It's a mirror with different like stances, but it's a mirror. And you're exactly right, because you're going to push. They're going to push for those same kind of things, which I mean, kind of already do. Like you look at the extremists with the ethno states and stuff like that. That's their safe space. They're already pushing for their safe space. So if you want to get your rights to your safe space on the left, or your, cabinet at school to cry in, and then the right wants to say, hey, let's kick out these people, the far right, I apologize to normies. Why shouldn't they get it? You're just going to push and push. And I just see that they're, a political horseshoe. They're pushing this narrative that they're never going to be able to win at, because it's going to bite them in the ass.
Yeah. I mean, one side's too hot, the other side's too cold. And if we want to get through this, everybody needs to come back to the middle. And I'm not saying I'm not saying don't be Republican, don't be Democrat, but I'm saying you got to get back to the level of being able to communicate with people and not worrying about the far left or the far right having any sense of control over you. And right now, it is very real that the far left has a large amount of control over the left. And what I find is, I think for most people on the left, they're just passively silent. They don't want to piss off the people on the far left. And some of them probably take a little bit of pleasure in seeing people on the right getting a little bit of the shaft. But you know what? When it swings back the other way, it could get very fucking ugly. So everybody come back to the middle.
Yeah, and start talking with each other. So Reggie B. Cable just said this in the chat. I bought an extra copy of Jawbreakers to donate to my local public library. Everyone should do the same. I actually think that is a genius idea, and thanks for doing that. I'm sure John and Diversity really appreciate the double support there.
Absolutely. I mean, Jawbreakers is a perfectly fine book. There's no crazy political stance on it. There's no anti-white, anti-black, anti-anything in this book, which makes it even more crazy that they're talking about banning it. And it's perfectly fine for your library. This is a book that I would have read when I was 14. That's my gauge for anything I work on. Is this something I would have been into when I was 14 years old? Absolutely. And yeah, guys, if you grab extra copies, awesome. Give them to libraries, give them to old comic book fans that have left the industry because they just got bored. Hey, slap it down as a gift, Christmas presents, whatever. And yeah, it's a perfectly fine book. Your kids can read it. You may want to give it a look through just in case. I mean, we do have a giant ape getting tore up, but trust me, when I was 14, I would have loved this. So, yeah, it's completely accessible.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem with, just because you've been standing out there and talked about some of your views, that you've been pushed this way. I actually have one of my mods wondering, what do you think about Rob Liefeld?
Oh, Rob Liefeld. Yeah, no, I like him. Anything specific?
I don't know. He was asking him, is he in the industry too?
Yeah, Rob Liefeld is the creator of Deadpool, X-Force. I used to work for him. I was his assistant, and I have a good history with Rob.
Yeah,
I saw
you did some Deadpool.
What's that?
I've seen that you did some Deadpool, right?
Yeah, I did one issue of Cable Deadpool, and it was only 12 pages in Cable Deadpool. But I also did another product of Rob's, which is Youngblood, and that was a book that I grew up on when I was a kid. So, That was a real treat. I did that like 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah, I what really brought me into comics when I was younger was, your traditional Spider-Man was really big for me. That was a big one for me, just because it was accessible because it was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, when
um
did you come into comics?
90s, because I'm 33, so
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So I got a little bit of time on you. When I came in, he was a married man. And that was Todd McFarlane's uh, original run when he was the writer and artist. And that'll always be my Spider Man. And even the Spider Man face on here is the eye, the size of the eyes is very McFarlane.
yes, definitely
And
is.
yeah, I've always been a big fan of his. But yeah, I mean, that was something that's also one of my complaints about the industry is they felt they had to turn him back into a kid. And, I wanted the story to go forward. Like, again, I'm 14 years old. I shouldn't really have any interest in a married man, but I did. It was a very well drawn comic. I was engaged by the art. The story was fun. I remember, I think it was the Sub City storyline, and Peter and Mary Jane are being playful, and I think he webs her up in her nightgown. And I mean, this is just if anything, it is showing you a happy in love couple. And they ended up having to undo that as time went on because they felt that no one wanted a 30-year-old Spider-Man. Well, I did. So
Well, it's like, do you want to constantly have to rehash your character because of shifts in time and you're trying to catch the next generation? Or do you want to hope that you catch them with what you have and then they go backwards, and go to the,
mhm.
origin? Because you see that a lot. I mean, Spider-Man's a great example. If you look at it's a shift in the like, how often have they reset in the movie industries? You have two resets before it came back over to Marvel Studios from Sony. Well, in an agreement, and it's reset again. It's like, can we just find something that works and stop trying to reset the damn video? Like, stop resetting the character. Like, let's move on with him.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great idea if there was a line that continued the story, even if it had to be right on through to the death, like a real finale. But some of my favorite comic book storylines are when they're older. Stories like Old Man Logan, which was based kind of what they based the Logan movie off of, very thinly. Um, and there was a DC story called Kingdom Come, written by he who should not be named anymore. But that book kept me in comics, and because the art was so fantastic and I loved the story. But it was the same thing. It was all the DC icons and, well, the entire DC universe pretty much, all at older points in their life. It was easily accessible. I mean, all you had to understand was a basic idea of who Batman is, who Superman is, who these other characters are, and then you rediscover their world. And that was a really good story.
Yeah, and like, I came into Batman through the animated series and then started getting into the comics and stuff. And I think when they started, DC did the animated series really well. Because they were at least when I was watching it, was every, afternoon after you got out of school and stuff. And that's what brought me, because we had a local comic book store where they held, Pokemon tournaments and all kinds of shit when I was little. And it was, you go in and you look at, all the different books and the different things, and you find something that might catch your eye. And they're not aiming at what's politically correct. I do not understand why they're pushing this when young boys and girls don't give a fuck about that. Like, they don't. You think that transitioning or a gay or whatever 14-year-old truly in their own head without social bullshit, they care if their superhero's boy or girl. They just probably like the superhero for the writing, the art, and everything else. So why do you have to spin it to, have every recognizable 2,700 genders that there are as characters?
Yeah. Again, it's something you can never keep up with. So, once you start trying to play their game and make them happy, you've entered a game that you are destined to lose. Once they see you blink, they're going to come at you, and they're going to make you play the game until they fire you. And it's in everybody's best interest to just stick to your creative guns and do exactly what you wanted to do in terms of telling a good story. And if that includes a highly diverse cast, great. More power to you. But I always say, you can do just about anything you want in comics, but it has to be well done. The execution has to be believable. The great example is when they turned Iceman gay. I mean, they actually did that in one issue where they said Jean Grey was reading, essentially mind raping by some accounts, a young Iceman, and just outed him in front of, I think, other people. I'm not 100% sure on that. But then she just goes, "Oh, Bobby, you're gay."
What?
And then that was it. He was gay. He's like, "Oh yeah, I guess I was gay." And so then it all becomes the, Bobby, learning how to deal with his new life as a gay man. And again, I say, this could have been done, but it should have been done over 2 years. And what you do is you keep setting this up as like little subplots, and you let it build to where you can get the reader on board with what you're about to do. And then when you do it, you can actually get behind Bobby as a character and say, "Oh yeah, man, the signs, they did set this up. They did do this very well." And, I can believe it. And, at that point, you would get fans behind that character, gay, straight, whatever. And you would relate to it because that now this is his struggle to find and understand this stuff. But it's not. I mean, he found out he was gay, and next thing he's doing is, he's going to the clubs and he's trying to pick up random men. So, I mean, this is how they did it. And it's the most ridiculous way of telling a story ever. And when you point that out, they're saying you're a homophobe.
No, I just want some development in my story. I don't care if the character's gay, trans, whatever. I just don't want you to just drop it like on one cell. She's, reaching into his mind, and on the next cell, you're gay,
yeah.
bro.
It's like, that's essentially what happened.
Like, what is that? What does that even do for the character development or the building of anything behind the character?
It doesn't. It only pushes an agenda. It gets the agenda right out there, right in your face, and they're trying to rub it in your face. Because again, you have to consider. I mean, when I was a kid, I was watching Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and that's Spider-Man, Iceman, Firestar. So, whether Iceman was a big character or not, I mean, he was a part of my life since my childhood. And when I was reading the X-Men comics, I remember his dad was a bit of an asshole and a racist. And, I thought that was like a great character because, you see that Bobby has to deal with this asshole dad. And at the time he was dating this hot Asian chick. I think her name was Opal. And, but that was the Bobby that I knew from the comics. And then, you can't do anything with that. But even so, if you still got to go and you got to make him gay, come on, just put in the lead time, build up the story, make it interesting.
I mean, even if they would have done it as like 5 or 6 books, like on the character development over, like a month and a half or 2, if it's a weekly, and like actually feel like you're not just ramming something down the person's throat. And it's not because, oh, you guys can't deal with homosexuality. No, it's because we actually are invested in our characters and we actually are invested in what we like.
Yeah. and then here's the thing, so what happens when they do that with Spider-Man, right? So there's no reason not to. If you can do that with Iceman, why not do it with Spider-Man? What are you, a homophobe? Are you against that? You see what I'm saying? It's like, look, man, you can't just go and fuck with everybody.
Yeah,
so
if Spider-Man going to the club shooting his web all over some guys' faces.
Yeah. And if you want to introduce a gay Spider-Man, okay, fine, but it can't be Peter Parker. It's clearly established he likes the ladies. So not everybody is bi. And, if you're going to go and you're just going to start turning everybody into a bisexual person, then you're not being accurate. And it just gets ridiculous. Again, you will never make them happy. There will never be enough bi, black, and then that's the thing too, because if they get a minority, they're happy to make it not just a black guy, but a gay black guy, or, it has to go down the ladder. So then you start feeling bad for black characters because now your representations, it's got to be everybody's representation. You don't want to just have a minority in there. You got to cross off as many checks as possible.
Yeah, and they're pushing that narrative. Someone in the audience was asking, why do you think? Sorry, let me rephrase this. Garth Ennis never gets any heat from the SJWs for his books. Why do you think this is? They're pretty violent and very sexual, and plenty of homosexual humor.
Probably because he's not necessarily doing any of this stuff in Marvel. I think he did The Boys, and I think that might have been independent, maybe DC or Vertigo or something like that. I'm not overly familiar with the Garth Ennis stuff. I know he did some Punisher. Anything past 5 years ago, man, is still kind of safe. All this craziness has happened in the last 5 years, and you can get away with a lot. And again, I don't know Garth Ennis. I don't know what his angle is. I'm just not into the guy or the work. So,
well, you know what I just found out that he worked on that I didn't know was Preacher, and I am a big fan of that because I came into that from that TV show that they adapted from the graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I didn't know he even worked on that.
Vertigo. So, Vertigo is all, I mean, that's kind of the edgy image of DC. So, you're going to get away with something in a Vertigo line. And me personally, I think there's a place for everything. So, if you want to have your edgy book, great, do it in a Vertigo. You want to have, but your superhero stuff, that's a specific audience too. And you don't want to drive that audience away. But Garth Ennis, anything past 5 years ago, is still safe. Anything he does now, if he came up onto Marvel, I mean, if he's throwing in gay people, he's probably going to be heralded as a champion. But if he kills a transsexual, even to make a point that they're being oppressed, which again, I believe is what happened when Howard Chaykin did a book for Image. And I can't remember the name of the book, but there was a transsexual that was being beaten, but it wasn't being beaten like because the artist writer is against transsexuals. He was making a point, and he got hammered on to the point that Image released an apology for showing a trans person being beaten up.
Because you can't have some political speak or have a situation where you're trying to elicit something that they've gone through. Like, I don't understand.
Well, basically, you can't have a victim being victimized in your comics. So what that end game ends up being is when you can't show violence against a trans person, you can't show it against a gay person, you can't show it against a marginalized person. Who's left? Who do you show the violence against?
White people. And pretty much. Someone was asking if you ever read Image Comics Revival.
No. It's some kind of people come back from the dead story or something like that.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think the only people you can get show and get away with them being victims is white people, because they're the majority, and they've never known oppression. So it's okay to do it to them.
Yeah. And again, very dangerous, because there will be a backlash to this eventually. And no one's going to like that. I don't want it to happen. I don't want to see it happen. Yeah, I don't want to see this country getting thrown into some kind of bloody fucking civil war over stupid shit.
No, and it's very like, why can't we just, with the mentality of live and let live, stop trying to impose your bullshit upon me. I'm not imposing my shit on you, so why can't we just, if you don't like it, ignore it. It's that plain and simple. Turn off the TV, shut your eyes, and just walk away from the screen. Like, why do you think that there's been such a big push in all industries to make yourself politically correct when everyone has agency? Like, you'd agree with that, right? They have their own right to step away or boycott something, right?
Oh, if someone wants to boycott something, as an individual?
Yeah, or like, I mean, what I mean in the statement is, if they want things to change or they don't like something they see, one, turn off the TV, walk away from it, speak up against it, but don't
Oh yeah, yeah.
silence it,
Yeah, in terms of how to live a normal, healthy life, absolutely. If something is bothering you, turn off the TV. But there are limits to that, though, because at some point the culture just keeps, if all you do is you keep turning it off, at some point the culture is just going to slide away. So, at some point you do have to make a stand somewhere. And what my stand is pretty simple, and that's just, hey, when you guys are coming for freedom of speech, you're the ones I'm looking out for, or looking at the most. You have my highest level of concern, and that's the far left right now. They want to control how you speak, they want to control how you think, and that should scare people. As Americans, you should be concerned about that. And that's where your threats are coming from right now, and that's the far left, and that's the SJWs, and that's the people that are infiltrating Marvel Comics. And if you believe comics are for kids, then consider that too, because these comics have been pushing out anti-white bias, anti-Trump politics. So, think about what's going into your kids' heads. So,
yeah, and it's one of those things where if it is an industry aimed at younger, or at least certain books are, right? But if you're going to watch your kids read something that's pushing this narrative of you can't like white people, or white people are the devil, and straight people are horrible, and don't support the president even though he has the shittiest job in the world, you got to wonder what their end goal is. It's to twist and manipulate the younger generation as much as they can, and they're going to push and push and take and take. And it's that thing that we those in this conversation, those in your industry, in the industry I work in YouTube, have to be willing to have these conversations and put our foot down and say, you know what, at some point it's got to stop. Like, you didn't just let the Nazis keep doing their thing. And I know this is comparing them to Nazis, but who wanted to take everyone's rights? Who wanted to take away everything? Who wanted ultimate control? And look what the far left, because I mean, anyone even slightly to the right of those crazies are now considered alt-righters.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's straight up liberals that have been called Nazis and homophobes. So, they've let these people take control of whether it be the political party or what. And it's put them into a really bad spot because they can't even say anything.
Yeah, and
So,
I
I
think
mean,
it was a
once you've
political
called
party.
your family and your friends, when you go home for the holidays and you call your family and your friends racist, and you're really doubling down on your feelings towards them. When you come to the realization that you were the asshole and that you were the racist and you were the judgmental one, I mean, I've said this before, but I mean, you can really have these people at a position to where they may be suicidal, and they could be very dangerous on their way out. And because it's really hard when you're 20 years old to say you're sorry, and when you've told your family, your friends, that they're all Nazi bigots, racists, and that when you called them that, you got your little dopamine hit, you felt good about it, you felt superior, because maybe you weren't the smartest one in the room, but now you are. Now you're able to belittle these people that made you feel small before. So when they come to the realization that they really were a piece of shit, that can be a dangerous person. But to avoid that, they have to double down. They have to triple down. They have to quadruple down, because if they look in the fucking mirror, it might be the end of them.
Yeah, and they might not like what they see because it's warped, and it warps their personality and their demeanor. And it's the same on both extremes. And you have this push and this mentality, and it's good to see someone like yourself, who it works in an industry that's so heavily dominated by it, willing to stand up for themselves. I mean, you look at like the guy who stood up against Google and wrote his memo, and people who are willing to put themselves on the line for those of us who, one, don't work in an industry where we can get away with that because we can't freelance or whatever it is, and two, or we're just too scared to actually share our political beliefs or be open. And it allows for people to, kind of say, you know what, I'm glad there's James Damore out there, and, Jon Malin and these other guys who are willing to, be a voice without.
Well, I mean, Brett Weinstein, the professor at what was it? Evergreen College, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's someone that I really look to as, because he considers himself to be completely on the left, but, I think he got to the point where I think I'm at, which is like, look, at the end of the day, we all have to get behind free speech. We all have to not let domination of another race be acceptable or okay. And that goes for white on any other race or any other race on white. We're all in this together. And if we want to make it to the end, we gotta get along, motherfucker. You know what I mean? And but Brett Weinstein is, I mean, I look at that guy, and when he stood there with all those people just yelling in his face, and all the heat he had to take, he ended up not having a job. I think him and his wife had to leave their professorships, and the hits these people have to take, and I'm not up there at all with Brett. I'm on a smaller scale, but we need as many people as we can that are gonna just say, look, man, I'm just not okay with any racism. I'm not okay with white on black, and I'm not okay with black on white. So
yeah. Why can't we just be egalitarians and just not break everyone down to their 27 different things that makes them different than someone, and put them in their bubble with just those people? Like, we're all humans. We all should want equality.
I had a conversation with my brother not too long ago, and I think he was kind of not believing. He's not really into the politics and stuff. And I was talking to him on the phone, and he was telling me how he had gone to, I think it might have been on his girlfriend's side of the family or something, but he went to this dinner, and a niece or something somewhere in the family had made an announcement at the dinner table that they now recognize themselves as a they or a there or whatever. And I told them, I said, well, you know, what you just saw there was a cult member. Like, that's the real deal right there. And what that person is doing is they are setting you up to fail. They are setting a trap for you. And that trap is that we can all play a part. And that part is that we're all going to be nice and pleasant, and we're going to smile, and we're going to be polite to each other. But when you fuck up my pronoun, you're fucking dead. That's what it is. It's an invitation to become violent, to become hostile to perfectly normal people. And so you're setting up traps, and that's what those pronouns are. They're all traps, because you put 50 people in a room with 50 different pronouns. You're going to keep track of them all? Hell no. Ain't going to happen. You can't keep track of it with 5 people in a room. And the moment you fuck up, and if they are looking for a reason to get at you, if you piss them off earlier in the conversation, they're going to use that as their trigger and their validation to go off on you in a way that would be shocking. And that's what this pronoun game is. It is a game. It's a game of, I'm going to catch you fucking up so I can get that dopamine hit of me just chewing into your ass for not referring to me as Zer.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, it's language. And language doesn't just immediately change when you assume and want it to change. I'm not going to start calling people in a term. Yeah, maybe back in the 1200s, it was common use to use the word they, but you don't describe an individual as a they. It's a multiple person pronoun these days, and language has changed. Well, people used it in the 1200s. No one cares, motherfucker. What do we use it for now? We use it for a group of people, not just an individual.
They're redefining things on their own terms that are setting them up to be in positions of power over other people. And it's a lot of domination that's going on. It's a lot of telling you where you can stand, what you can do with your hands while you're standing. I mean, it's right back to your elbows on the table. It's an amount of control over your speech, the way you address them. And, like I said, I mean, it all ends up in really bad places. It's insanity that, society has largely turned a blind eye to and tolerated, but these people do not tolerate. And now they're rewriting the rule books in their favors. Like, you can't be racist if you're not white.
Because they've been oppressed and they're not the majority. And it's like, if you just take a quick second, open your dictionary and look at the actual definition, just because you want to spin it your way doesn't mean it actually works. And I know plenty of people who would be called minorities who do not agree with that. I have black friends. I have one of my Deus Volt, one of my mods, really good friend, Chilean minority, but he's conservative and he thinks that this shit is a load of garbage. And we need more people like that who are willing to say, you know what? No, I am not oppressed just because of my skin color or my genitalia between my leg. Like, let's move past the bullshit and be real. You're oppressed because you put yourself in that state of mind. And if you want to be in that state of mind, so be it. But don't fucking involve the rest of us. Go live your oppression somewhere in your sad little basement just because mommy didn't give you enough attention or daddy freaking spanked you or whatever. Like, I'm sorry. Don't bring it into the world.
Yeah. Well, daddy didn't get the pony because, again, a lot of these people are from middle class backgrounds. And but I will say, be careful, because when you say that's not a dictionary definition, what's going to happen is it will be.
It'll shift.
And then you won't have that. And what I say is, we all know what racism is. That's hatred against somebody because of the color of their skin. And if you let the dictionary be your decider, in the end, they will make it so.
Oh, of course.
Then you won't have that anymore.
Well, and of course, I mean, we all know what it means. It's just, you know, why do they always have to shift everything to fit their narrative? And it's like, why can't we just look at what it is for what it is? If you hate another person based on any defining characteristics, it's probably racist or, you know, sexist or whatever. But if you just don't like a person or you find them annoying, that has nothing to do with racism or any of those other things. Maybe you just don't like the individual.
Yeah, well, I think for society to function, again, we're talking about tolerances, you know,
Yeah.
and when we deal racially or religiously or whatever, when I compare like Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Andrew Dice Clay, these are people that I would say are all 5 or 10% racist, So Dave Chappelle, 5 or 10% racist. So I would say that to the point that hey, you can tell racial jokes and they can be pro or con that race at any given time. But any of these people, I would gladly go up to, give a handshake to, and thank them for bringing comedy into our life. I don't believe for a second that any of those people would refuse somebody a job because of the color of their skin, or go up and bash on a trans person, just for the sake of doing so. And I mean, these are what I would say is just, that's a tolerable person. When you find somebody that is willing to become violent towards other people or is willing to discriminate in a job or a hiring situation, those are the people that are really the concern, and they should be the concern. I don't want anyone coming into a job that is going to use somebody's race or sex against them. And when Christina Harrington was doing that for that portfolio review, that should have been a press release saying Marvel does not support what happened, and Christina Harrington was disciplined. And same with the other editor who said make no mistake, win or lose, if Trump wins or loses, we're going to remember who you are. Boom, that should have been another press release. It should have been another apology saying we don't agree with this statement by our editor because we want an inclusive environment, and we understand that all of our freelancers all have different political views and they are all welcome here.
Yeah, you flip the script, it's a guy, and the guy gets run out of town, never to work again.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's all a downward slope when you play by these different rules for different people. So if somebody's a threat, that's where it's a concern. And if they're using discrimination in hiring practices, that's where it's a concern for me. And that goes for any way. I mean, if that's a guy saying girls shouldn't get hired, hey, if you got the ability, I want you to have every chance to get in here. I'm still annoyed that you still have to fill out your name and your sex on like job applications and stuff, because you're already going to give them your social security number. Can't we just make a system where all your application is a social security number? That way you're definitely not being hired on your race, your sex, your religion, anything that might define you. Because, if you're going to say, well, a Johnny might get hired quicker than a Tyrone, then you say, okay, well, let's just hide the names and just use the social security numbers, which you need to get hired anyways. It all goes apart when you're in a interview situation, but you presumably are in that interview situation because your resume was better than everybody else's.
Yeah, and Australia actually did that, and they found that they started hiring more men than women because they didn't have a name or any kind of associative thing, and they were bringing in more men for interviews because they were better qualified.
Well, then that's how it should be, and it's not because it's a sexist thing. It should be that because you, as a company, are bringing in your most qualified people.
Yeah, exactly. From the chat, who are Jon Malin's least favorite heroes and villains?
Least favorite?
So which hero do you hate the most currently, and which villain do you hate the most currently?
You know, that's hard, man, because I I always try to find something that I'm really into, you know, with almost everybody. I mean, I could tell you, you know, Squirrel Girl sucks, but if I was put on Squirrel Girl today, dude, I'd do everything I could to make her awesome. And I don't know, a bad guy. I don't know even who's a Hydra Cap. Hydra Cap is like the worst bad guy ever. So
yeah, I think I can agree with you there.
Yeah, but if I was to approach Hydra Cap, if I had some kind of control in that storyline, I definitely would have found a way to bring him back in a way that fans would say is that's a really good fucking story. And we didn't think you could bring him back from the brink, but you did. And what they ended up doing in Secret Empire, they destroyed the character and basically replaced him in the end with a cosmic cube.
Well, it was their quick and easy scheme to get out from under the character.
Yeah. That whole story was so bad. So bad. So, but, you know, there's a lot of problems, but, you know, there's still good stuff in comics. I mean, the characters can all be great, even the ones that have been, you know, just the worst in the last handful of years. Even America Chavez, you know, a terrible book by all accounts. The writer was racist. Gabby Rivera, you can probably go on her Twitter today. She's probably saying something about how white people shouldn't be with or how Mexicans or Hispanics shouldn't be with white people. So, yeah, that person got a job because, again, how do you give that person a job? You know? And it's because editorial's corrupted. These are SJWs, and they say, you know, hey, fuck white guys. So, it's okay. But America Chavez, yeah, if I was on America Chavez, I would find a way to make her a great character.
Yeah, but that's the difference between you and these other people is you want to see what's best for the character and not just push some sort of narrative. Like, right. And yeah, I'm not talking about story narrative. I'm talking about agenda narrative.
Yeah, I would not be pushing an agenda with those characters at all. I think there are areas where you could push agendas, like even me. Again, I'm a moderate. I voted Obama. You know, I'm not a hard right guy, even though I've been labeled alt-right. But you know, you could put me on Green Arrow, who is a very liberal character. And you know what? If I was in a writing position, I'm an artist, but if I was in a writing position, I could probably find some pleasure in just coming up with some crazy leftist angles and just really digging into that. And same with Captain America. I mean, he's the true blue American Boy Scout. And I would want, as a creative person, I would want to go the complete other way with Captain America and do some Frank Miller, you know, fighting the terrorist shit with him. So,
oh, that'd be so awesome to push like something like that, like ISIS or something, where he's just
yeah
in the Middle East just wrecking shit.
Yeah.
I was wondering, and you don't have to share it if you don't want. Where'd you vote this election? Did you vote red, blue, or independent?
Yeah, I found that it doesn't do me any favors to say who I did or did not vote for. And what it is people, what they do is they use that as a disclaimer. And it's a way, like you can, like if you hear what I have to say and you say, well, everything John says is pretty valid. Who do you vote for? And then if I tell you the person you don't want to hear, then you use that and you say, well, he was just pulling a fast one or an angle. Or if I say the person you do want to hear, then, you know, that doubles down and you're like, oh, okay, John's a good guy. So
yeah, I think that's actually a very smart way to play it, because then you let your argument and your talking points be the guide, and you don't have that shift of, oh, well, he voted for, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to be credited or discredited by who I voted for. I want everybody to hear what I have to say and think rationally and critically about all these things that are going on. You don't have to be on the left or the right. Just think critically and understand that there are people that are out there trying to manipulate you. And it is dangerous. And I'm going to call it out on the left. I'm going to call it out on the right. If this stuff, if these were a bunch of Richard Spencer types coming into Marvel Comics right now, I would still be saying the exact same thing. I'd say you have to be careful, man. And you can't let any pendulum swing one way too far. And right now it's too far on the left. And if it was too far on the right, I'd be saying it still. And I'd be probably losing some of the allies that I have. But again, I fall on the side of free speech. And I fall on the side of what is right for one is right for everyone. And is what is wrong for one is wrong for everyone. And if we want to function as a society, these have to be universal truths. And when you don't, when you let some people get away with some things and others not, you're going to rip society apart.
Oh shit, someone just dropped in the chat 167,830.
Awesome. Yeah, great.
Yeah, so it looks like you guys will break 170. You got about 6 hours to go.
Yeah, that's crazy. Hey, dude, guys, if anyone listens to this, you know, please go to the Indiegogo and drop $25 on Jawbreakers. So this is our project, and Diversity in Comics, Brett Smith, and you know, I think me and Diversity in Comics, for the most part, are almost aligned in that. I think, you know, we try to stay away from one hardline political side. We're both, you know, anti-SJW, and I think we're both, you know, we stand for free speech at the end of the day. And, you know, we both understand that there needs to be a certain level of tolerances for what people can say that may be considered off color in order for everybody to get along the best that we can. And this book is us, you know, again, it's not political. We're just telling an adventure story here in the African jungles. And it's superheroes that are now old. They're basically the Expendables if they had superpowers, and they're off trying to find missions to have a purpose for themselves. And this book has been seen as a middle finger to what's going on with the SJW influence in the comic book industry, and that's largely why it's as successful as it is right now. And yeah, so if these things bother you, if what the SJW, the far left extremists, if that bothers you, and if you want to say something about that, then this is a little bit of that. And you know, if you put your $25 down on this, you know, if you're into comics and you're having a hard time putting together $25, drop Marvel. Just drop them. And then go over here and use that same money and put it here, because the people who really are the mover and shakers in the editorial right now, believe me, they don't like you. They don't. They just don't like you. They wish they want you to die be the fire, you know.
They want you to shift over to their political views, or else you're not welcome here.
Yeah, and anyone to the right of far left is not welcome. And again, you know, like, we've been promoting this book for 30 days. No one in the comic book mainstream has been covering us. And I've asked people in my community, you know, that would otherwise have been my friends, you know, hey guys, you know, retweets, nothing. There is no one that wants to touch it because we are red hot radioactive. And that is simply because we believe that people should get along and not have to be under this weird kind of mind control. And, you know, that's all it took for us to be red hot controversial for again, a Barack Obama voter, and completely radioactive, 100%. So if you guys want to take a stand against that kind of bullshit, support our book and make it so we can finish this book nice and strong, and then do it again and again and again, each time, hopefully building a larger and larger audience. So eventually the mainstream industry may collapse. It's never been as low as it is right now. We could build an entire industry right along the side of it that circumvents the entire thing. And we can start bringing in more people that take stands against this, and try to help them along, potentially giving people work, but again, it's merit. It has to be merit based. And, the further along we go, I'd love to see really big names come in and help us out on these things. And, but we didn't know this thing was going to be this big. We started out with a $5,000 goal, and that was it. And, it was going to be just me and Richard,
Well, and you guys were going to do it as a staple, right? Just a staple book.
It was going to be just a basic staple, 50 pages, me, him, and that was going to be it at the end of the day. But it grew. And as it kept growing, Richard happened to have, he had already published Jawbreakers book 1 that he wrote and drew. So he had that in his back pocket. And he was already, I think, on the side, was already commissioning another guy to work on the book 2 of that. So that became our next goal was, hey, if we hit this stretch goal, we're going to release book 2. Then we released book 2, because the funding was there. And then as it kept going, Richard ended up having book 1 redrawn by another guy. Boom, now that's there. Then we threw all that into the book. So the book went from 50 in a staple to now it's a cardstock, I think, cover. So it has a spine like a trade paperback would. And now it's 100+ pages, including, I think he's talking a 5 or 10 page fan art section. So, this thing, it just blew up. And, as the money came, or as the money was, at least it didn't come in because we won't actually physically have it until we're closed here. But, Richard has kept reinvesting the money into trying to make the product better. And, eventually we're going to do this again in one form or another. And, again, I mean, for me, if I have any say, my say is that we keep raising the quality as best we can. And ideally, I'd love it if we started pulling people away from Marvel and DC and doing some stuff with them and just grabbing these guys as they're being shucked out of the industry. Because trust me, at the end, it'll be the SJWs protecting the SJWs, and they will be discarding all that they find unfit.
Oh yeah, because their opinions will come out, and they'll have to, save face with the crazies. And it's. I mean, the industry is already kind of suffering, and you see these local retailers, fighting to stay alive because of what the industry is pushed to. And now you have something like this where, I mean, shit, you're not just getting a book. It's autographed by everyone. You're getting all the stretch goals.
It's autographed by Richard. So Richard is going to be the only one to actually be autographing the book.
And then you guys are going to do an actual. Well, you passed.
We're showing up. We're going to show up to at least one convention, which was our $150,000 stretch goal. So that'll be me, Richard, and the colorist Brett Smith.
You guys have you're going to base that on a vote from fans. So I think everyone in here needs to vote for the West Coast, even if you're not in the West Coast, because fuck the rest of you.
Yeah, no, I don't know the specifics, but that is what I heard, was that there would be a vote of some sort to whittle it down. When he does his live stream here in the next hour or so, which I'll be sitting in on, he may be making announcements on that.
Yeah, and with you guys breaking it so heavily, maybe you guys could do like 2 or something, do a West Coast, East Coast, or, because you guys, shit, it looks like you're going to hit 170. You're at 168,500 right now, so you'll definitely break that with 5 hours to go. And I think you're going to see more people who have been ousted out of the community slowly shift to something like this.
Yeah, and if he wants to do a second convention, whatever he wants to do, I'm there to support the book. And but also we have to, it's a real concern that when we go to one of these conventions, especially if it's, LA area or New York area, anywhere that's heavy liberal, we don't want to invest thousands of dollars to get to one of these shows and then be turned away at the door because we are alt-right, Nazi, bigot, homophobe. So,
Well, and you know what? If that's the case, fuck it. You have many fans, and I'm on the West Coast, and I know many bookstore owners that would be willing to have you, because they're not pushing this garbage like mindset even in California. So I mean, there's independent owners out there. So I mean, you could always do what you did with that. The signing you did a couple of weekends ago at in Michigan, right?
Oh, yep, BC Comics for a free comic book day. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly,
yeah, and that was in the 50,000 or 150,000 stretch goal. That was the thing, is that it would either be a convention or a store signing. So I mean, it could go either way. And if someone wants to host us, we'll probably get out there if we can. So
yeah. What time's that stream start for everyone who is watching here, so they can jump over there?
Well, that's the other thing about Richard.
It's kind of whenever.
It's kind of whenever. He kind of puts like a roundabout on it. I think I think it's probably smart to be looking anytime between now and 11. I think he said he was going to try breaking it down into 2 live streams. So he was going to take a break and then he was going to come back for the last hour. We'll see how that happens. So his phone usually goes dead.
He's trying to push for like the ending of the actual go, right?
Yeah, he'll be up at, I think he said it'd be about 1 a.m. his time. I think it closes at midnight Pacific time, I think. So.
Yeah, looks like right around midnight, West Coast. But guys, if you are new here and you haven't checked it out, I have linked it a few times. Check out the Indiegogo and look at some of the amazing art. They do have some posted. They did stop posting it so that people would not spoiler the story.
Yeah, we were actually asked to stop showing pages. So
yeah, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, so these were actual pages? Oh, man.
Yeah, so we have like the first, I don't know what it is, maybe 12, 13 pages up there. Believe me, guys, I mean, this story is just getting started. There's plenty more that goes on past these pages. So, we wanted to give everyone a good taste of what this book was going to be about. And, if you look at that Indiegogo, I mean, you'll see the colors by Brett Smith. They look great. And that was a good, smart thing he did too. Was originally because I was drawing as this campaign was going, and I still am. And originally he put up just my layout sketches, and then it would be my full black and white line art, my finished line art. And then as the coloring was completed, and there should be some black and white line art still on there, maybe just 2 or 3 pages at this point. But then as Brett has been coloring behind me, he's been almost updating real time, right along the way here. So, it is worth at least having a look at the art when you go onto that page.
Yeah, and the art, I was down towards the bottom and looking at the actual line art stuff and then the colors, and it just freaking, man, he's a good color. Like, and your art really, sets it apart, and it's something, I don't know, it's kind of different. It's a little bit different style. I like it a lot. I know you gotta probably jam pretty soon. Anything else you want to tell the remaining fans here tonight?
Yeah, I guess, anything really worth doing, you're going to have risk. And, whether that be personal, professional. And, sometimes you just really have to take a stand somewhere. And, everything is a risk. But, I really feel that what I'm doing is correct. And this put me in a really difficult position, even accepting this, but at the end, I mean, it takes a lot to take that step in that direction sometimes. And, this Indiegogo just popped up overnight and boom, I'm on board, but I mean, there's real thought, real stress that goes in this stuff. And, you know, these are big decisions in your life. And this one happened to pay off. So, you know, if I say anything, you know, really think through about the things that you're doing in your life. And if you think that you're correct, you know, go ahead and take a step above the crowd. And there's going to be people that are going to throw tomatoes at you because no one likes anybody to stand out. And they're going to shit on you. They're going to tell you you suck. They're going to tell you everything you're doing is wrong. But if you believe that what you're doing is right, stick with it and see it all the way through. And believe me, it's a baptism of fire. And you will have doubts and you will have fears, and you know, things don't always work out, but at least believe in yourself enough, trust yourself, trust your ideas, and do everything, you know, and have really good thought behind it. Don't just willy-nilly your way into some idea. Know that you're going to follow through on it, stick with it. And if you're lucky, you know, you can succeed. It is still possible to succeed. We still do live in a, you know, the best country in the world. And I do believe that. And we have so many great things about where we live. And I'm really hopeful that everything returns to normalcy, because I was born and bred, you know, on Marvel Comics. So I would like to be back in there one day, just because I have such a spot for it in my heart. But right now, this is what's important. And this needs to be addressed, because I do feel, you know, that there is a element creeping into our society, our culture, that does not have the best of intentions. And, you know, I'm going to keep speaking out about that as much as I can. And I'm sticking to my guns. And I hope that other people, whatever ideas, whatever you feel that you have in you to tell or to do, you know, I hope that you will think it through as carefully as possible. And if you find that it's possible for you to do this thing, just do it. Get out there and head first, and don't listen to any naysayers. Once you've committed, just go with it, roll with it, and do your best. You may not win every time, but when you do win, it will feel good. And this was a win, and it does feel good. It feels good up to a tune of about $170,000 when we tried to raise $5 million.
Yeah, and so everyone here or hearing later understands, this money is all being put into the book and invested into the artists and everyone developing this book. So it's not like they've become rich off of it. They went from a stapled 50-page traditional comic book to a cardstock book like you see with graphic novels, to from 50 pages to 112 pages, revamping of the original comic and all kinds of cool stuff for their supporters. So, I mean, it's not like
we are not doing this for charity.
Of course, you're going to make money.
We are being handsomely compensated. Richard has been very generous. And that's because in the end, if he wants to do this again, you know, it's always in your best interest to keep everybody happy financially. So, you know, I can definitely say that, you know, I'm completely happy with the arrangement that I've made with Richard. And I believe Brett Smith is as well. And, you know, if he ends up doing another one, you know, I think we're pretty cool with coming along for it again. So, you know, again, we're not doing this just out of, you know,
charity.
Sainthood. You know, we also have rent and food that we want on our tables. So.
Well, yeah, and of course, but I mean, you know, sometimes people look at this and they're like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money." But you know what goes into it? The cost of your guys' labor, essentially, and other things. But before we jam out, I do have one last question for you, and it came from a really close friend of mine, and it's the question that you've probably heard before. So, who would win in a fight, Goku or Superman?
Goku or Superman?
Yes.
It's
like the nerd guy's question.
Well, my Goku knowledge is limited, but I know he can Super Saiyan out, and Oh man, Superman. If it's on Earth, I'm just gonna say Superman because Superman gets his power from the yellow sun. And oh well, I guess actually, if it's a nighttime battle, then Goku could actually have the edge, because you would be able to, as long as you can keep him on the far side of the Earth, then he wouldn't be able to necessarily recharge so much. If I had to pick one, again, my knowledge on Goku is limited, but I'm just going to go with Superman. Christopher Reeves at that.
Right? The original movie Superman.
Yes.
Righty, guys. If you do want to support Jon and Diversity in Comics and all these other guys, I'm going to link the Indiegogo one more time. I actually think you're going to break 170,000 as we're streaming.
That would be insane.
Yeah, it's sitting pretty damn close. It is at 169,500 pretty much.
Yeah. So we made what? I think I said early at the beginning of this, we were at 163, 164.
Yep.
So
yeah, and so over the time with, I mean, you got a lot of people supporting you guys on Twitter and elsewhere. And then, you know, people in here who are, you know, they're showing their love. I'm actually going to be picking up another 50 batch for a really good friend of mine because, you know what? He deserves it. He puts in a lot of work on my channel. Sicko, thank you for the help here and setting up everything and keeping the chat clean. Well, not clean, but, you know, no dick lords. Anyone new here, I appreciate the support you guys show to the channel and subscribing. Well, you're ready to cut loose, Mr. Malin?
yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Last thing, if anyone wants to check me out, I'm on @Jon Malin on Twitter. But thank you guys for having me. It was a pleasure, and support Jawbreakers.
You also have Mortal Enemy, right? On YouTube, you still do some stuff on there?
Yep, I do an occasional video. The Spider-Man head, this is my own little personal YouTube where I listen to I have my music while I'm drawing and motivational tapes, you know. So
nice.
This is my personal account. But yeah, I do have a channel where I do some drawing videos. I have some commentary, and that is called Mortal Enemy, and you can find that on YouTube. Yep.
And I'll link to it because it is in the bio and down below for you guys. And I have all my links down below as well. If you want to show any support to the channel besides subscribing, check out the Teespring. Got some new merch there. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Jon, for coming in. I appreciate it, man.
No problem.